landowner and you have some ideas and want some suggestions on how to be better stored for your property to build habitat, whether you're a municipality with parklands to manage, again, looking for ways to do that with a limited public works department. We have the experts here. We have a lot of opportunities for questions, and we're going to start with Marla.
So I live in Lower Frederick, which is up the road, and I have a pretty big front yard. It's all grass, and I know the grass is bad, and I'm cutting the grass and all that stuff. So I am doing a project to naturalize my front yard and put in a meadow. And so the first thing I did was let some of my grass grow, and a couple of people in my neighborhood called up the township building to complain. I'm also an elected official, so it's not really a good look when one of your elected officials is letting their grass grow long. So, you know, no good deed goes unpunished, but my question for all of you and anyone else who can answer it is, how do you educate people in your community that there are other options besides grass? And is there anything municipality can do in terms of ordinances to...
Sorry.
Here's a nice ring to it.
Okay, and so are there any ideas you have from what a municipality can do in terms of ordinances or incentives to encourage people to do what I am with difficulty trying to do?
We've worked with a number of homeowners, and having a corridor between like the street or the public spaces and your meadow, having that mode is sometimes helpful. Having the signs help. We had one person right across from the Cheltenham Township building. That front yard looked like a weed garden. It wasn't weeds, but you got the signage. You got an Audubon sign, you got a couple of others, so that
I did that.
people had the idea that something's going on here.
I had a sign that said, you know, meadow in progress.
Harden our appearance.
Yeah, that kind of thing
But
helps.
that's just for me. But broadly speaking, I want to encourage my neighbors and other people in the municipality to say, you don't have to just cut your grass every 2 weeks. There are other options. So in terms of you know, ordinances or other incentives, what can we do more broadly to let people know there are other options?
Yeah, I was just going to add that, you know, you're a government official, municipal official.
I'm a supervisor.
Supervisor, okay. So, you know, I don't know what the ordinances are in your municipality. Becoming a bird town, yeah, just as a.
We are a bird town.
Oh, okay. Which municipality?
Lower Frederick. Lower Frederick. We're just
Oh,
up the
yes,
street.
right. So, you know, I think it helps with some education through that. You can look at our Bird Town, Pennsylvania toolkits. You can also contact Wincott Audubon. We might be able to provide some programming for residents in your community. Others may have some comments.
Yeah, well, I think just making sure that the ordinances don't prohibit somebody from doing that is the starting point.
Yeah.
But then using your site as an example, one of the things we'd heard of in some other strategies for riparian buffers was basically somebody who was restoring a riparian buffer in their, it was a residential area, it was running through behind about 20 homes. They sort of did what I call sort of the Tupperware strategy. They did a restoration project and then basically just sent out an advertisement to their neighbors inviting them to come over for, you know, cocktails and snacks and give them really a tour of their own property. But I do think the providing some edge and the signage, I know you did it in your case, but that is really critical because it shows that it's intentional. And that's what it needs to really reinforce that this wasn't an accident, this isn't something that I'm being neglectful, it was an intentional thing, and then hopefully the signage perpetuates that. Yeah.
We're from Springfield Township, and we do No Mow May every year, which is a wonderful program. Our commissioners, we have one right here, was terrific about authorizing the program. We said we were going to let 25 homeowners do it, and they basically submitted a conservation program plan, which is what the ordinance requires. Very successful. We had no mow May signs to put in people's lawns, and we're going to just keep expanding it. We're going to start using the township properties, and I'll give you my contact.
Yeah, that's a great project. Thank you. Any other ideas on that?
Yeah,
Before we go to
I
the
have
next
one.
Yeah.
Well, Well, I'm from Lower Frederick too, and I'm not sure how much of the history that Marla knows, but we were one of the original oh yeah, you were when we joined Birdtown originally. Yeah. We were in the original Birdtown program, and shortly after we joined the program, we learned that the supervisors had adopted the International Building Maintenance Code, which has the broad, it's just, what do you call it? Boilerplate weed ordinance. And I was really dismayed about that because it made it so we couldn't actually legally do a lot of the stuff that we were advising people to do through Birdtown. But we haven't changed the ordinance. So educating people is one thing that we really need to do, but we need to get our elected officials to alter the ordinance. It's not that big of a deal to do. You don't have to throw out the whole thing, you just amend the ordinance.
Right.
Yeah, that's kind of what I say. That's like the first thing you should do. And I think that's where hopefully Birdtown, they actually, on your website, I'm sure you have some resources, some sample ordinances that municipalities can look at.
Yeah, and there, and there's some other in the toolkit, some other kinds of things to do. We did work with the Horticultural Society and PTF with I guess, it was a tree, not tree tenders, but it was a Tree Vitalized, the old program, and we took elected officials. We also had a tour of some of the different homeowners that were doing some things with the riparian buffer that had worked, and that was a way to educate as well, and to get government officials aware of here's what we're trying to do, and the rationale for it, and what the outcomes would be. And we think that was successful.
Yeah, I think that's particularly key too, because again, it's not just doing it on the municipal lands, but it's going to take property owner by property owner to implement a lot of these techniques that will be really beneficial for the watershed. Yeah, any other? Yeah, Herb.
First of all, what I'm about to say is really a warning to other people in townships. My name is Herb Miller. I'm a past commissioner in Upper Pottsgrove Township for 8 years. I was on the Planning Commission for 20. I also was in the Parks, Trails, and Historic Sites for a couple of years with my good friend Lee. We came in mass. Others are going to bring up a few incidents that you should be aware of. You see the signs. Now, unfortunately today, newspapers, unless you have a computer, you really don't know what's going on, because the Pottstown Mercury is so thin that nobody buys it. So guess what we do to get around to the populace, to let them know what our own government is undermining? Open space. They're stealing open space that we, residents, paid for by the hard-earned 0.25 tax, the referendum of which we concluded 61% that we want to save open space. If a local government can do what they've done to Upper Pottsgrove, and I was part of that government for a while, and I was there when we saved Tom Small's farm. This hand shook his hand, and he said, Herb, instead of selling to developers to ruin this beautiful vista, will you promise me that no buildings will be put on my precious farm land? Here's my hand, Tom. And guess what? I deceived him. It's much like historically the Girard College. Those of us who are younger don't even know what the hell I'm talking about. But if you want to bring it up in the computer, you'll find out how lawyers stole Girard College. With that, I'm going to turn this over to my dear veteran from the U.S. Navy, Dennis Elliott.
My apologies. If you have a question you'd like to ask our panel, we appreciate that perspective. And I would like to throw to the panel, a lot of municipalities, as I said at the beginning, preserve their open space. And there are best practices. There are ways to help protect against some of the outcomes that you're referring to, such as deed restrictions and things along that line. Has any of our panel dealt with or suggest through their practice how a municipality could best, if they're going to put their taxpayer money towards open space, how that might best be achieved? And I'll also add on not a shameless plug yet, but we have petitioned the DVRPC to do a campaign next year for open space earned income tax programs and provide guidance to municipalities who want to implement that measure or modify their existing measures to help with that. But I do want to turn over, unless you have a question to ask, we don't have very much time.
I do have a response. Yeah, we got till 6 o'clock.
I know.
I feel you're cutting us off.
What's that?
I feel you're cutting us off.
We listen
We
to
did
Mr. Murray
everything.
speak, and I'd like to get a response from our panel on that.
We did everything the county recommended to us. Everything. Even established an educational arboretum. We put it on the ballot and the people voted for it. Now the municipality arbitrarily took that land that the people paid for to protect. What we need from the county is a resolution that once it's put into your statements that Upper Pottsgrove Smola Farm is permanently protected, it has to be backed up by the county. We need a resolution to protect what you're selling to the taxpayers.
We have no ownership rights to that land. So in our plan, we call it open
Your
space as well,
commissioners,
and if
your
they want-
commissioners can establish a resolution that when residents or municipalities put their land into open space permanently, it cannot be touched in Montgomery County.
Bingo.
You can do
I'm not sure
that.
of the legal ramifications,
can do
but
that.
I will bring that back.
That's why you have meetings like this. Thanks to this man from, I didn't even know this gentleman from Laura Frederick. Why do we have meetings like this if we don't come and disseminate things that are destroying open space when some townships think, I want to save open space? Well, in this regard, the government is stealing the open space. Do you understand? And thanks to Mr. Cohen, who wrote an article in the Inquirer a year ago, he was right on.
Appreciate it. Does anyone want to address any strategies from municipal open space?
I don't have anything. I know there's, like these larger organizations that are land trusts will sometimes have trade lands, or they'll do something in exchange if there's but it's way above my pay grade.
Can I pose a hypothetical on this issue? If, once the plans are presented for this proposed building on a 30-plus acre farm, and mind you, there's no public water, no public sewer available, so there's going to be a lot of land disturbance on this property. Does at any point the county look at that issue and make a judgment on whether this plan can move forward as proposed?
We review every development that comes
Right.
as part of Act 247. So we look at our comprehensive plan, and we look at the local comprehensive plans as well. And all through this process, we have identified that there are areas that both municipal and county have agreed this is what it should be. And we'll be submitting those comments with any proposal that comes into us.
Okay, so the open space, not just county planning, but the open space department of the planning will also weigh in.
It's the office letter that goes between all sections, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. And I can contact any of you through this process?
Sure.
I'm a commissioner from Upper Pottsgrove.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so I'm just curious as to the process and when it gets to certain points, what's going to happen
Absolutely.
because of the situation that we're presented with.
And then our health department and DEP, of course, would get involved in any sewage,
Right,
just disposal issues, and same with the
because
well.
if there is a possibility that runs off into a stream
Right.
that runs off into the schools.
We have a question here for.
One of the things I hear a lot of people talking about, and when I hear also out in the communities, is about deer. What can you actually do about deer problems? All of you mentioned it. What do you do?
I've seen that can kick for 35 years in my current employment, just, follow through is, a challenge.
It is a section in the stewardship guidebook.
Yeah, so, can I ask what kind of property are you thinking of?
I just work for the county, but I work
Okay.
with a bunch of different municipalities. I get questions like from about in suburban areas, just in people's yards, and municipally owned open space, like, what should we do about this here?
Yeah, so for,
Everywhere.
there are, and that's why I was kind of asking what scale you're thinking about too. So when you think about it, yeah. The individual homeowner scale is a little trickier because, typically thinking of smaller properties, if you're thinking about an individual homeowner level, if you don't have a large property, there's fencing you can do for new plantings, especially for trees. There are repellents, mixed effectiveness with that. But when you're thinking about it at a municipal level, you do have some more options because you're usually dealing with larger pieces of land, usually less buildings. So, if you stick with the fencing idea, you can still fence any new plantings that you do, particularly trees. You can fence those or do the tree tubes, so that the idea is you protect them from deer browsing or from deer rubbing until they're at a point where they can actually withstand that. So the trees are tall enough, they're large enough to withstand that. You could also consider fencing the entire property. There are some big drawbacks with that. It is a lot of maintenance to make sure that your fence doesn't get any trees falling on it and cause gaps in it. You can, make sure that there's no holes that no deer get into that you then have to get back out. And it is costly to put up. So other options that you can look into are having a managed hunting program on the property, so that you can set up a program where people have to sign up. They have to go through a safety program. They have to prove that they're a safe hunter and will follow all the rules. And you limit the number of hunters on a property. So that kind of helps deal with some safety issues with that. And it's not just kind of like a wide open space for hunting. You have more control and management over that. And then another option is sharpshooters. You can hire professionals to come in and do, typically at night they'll come in and they'll take a certain amount of deer based on the number of deer that they find through surveys and just what's viable for them to take. And when you think about managed hunts or with sharpshooters, you do need to consider safety zones, like how close other buildings are in proximity to the property, so that may cut down what options there are, but those are some things to consider. And as Eric mentioned, those are covered in the stewardship guidebook as well. It's a tough one, especially, if you're just one property, one landowner, it takes a larger effort.
One good example, and this is at the macro level, is Valley Forge National Historic Park.
Yeah.
They've been doing this for about the last, 5 to 10 years, somewhere in there. And if you've ever driven through there 20 years ago or more recently, it's an incredible difference in the amount of meadow and how that landscape and habitat has changed. It's an extreme measure, and it does have some costs to it and drawbacks, but it's been very successful in that instance. Why don't you have Andy Adley?
Yeah, I was just going to add to that, is Valley Forge was nominated to become an important bird area in Pennsylvania, but there's a lack of understory that prevented it from becoming an important bird area. So that was back when the original program was being formed, but the controlled hunts there have made a difference. I was also going to say that municipalities will do controlled hunts or authorize controlled hunts on some of their properties. So Cheltenham, for example, a pretty densely populated area along the Tiffany Creek, approved to hunt. They closed the trails in the park. It's really a riparian buffer. And when I heard, was it 44 deer in a square mile? That's a prescription for disaster. I think there's different things that are done with the deer that are hunted. Some go to food cupboards. Some the hunters will eat. A lot of different ways to do it. A lot of times they're retired police too, or off-duty police that are involved.
I'm Jim Kapinski. I'm a commercial real estate appraiser. I also appraise open space. Part of the Willistown I've appraised, part of Brandywine Battlefield, the Paoli Battlefield. I'm for preserving open space, and I'm from Upper Pottsgrove Township. My question is, you had a slide up there that said disturbance. When you drive heavy equipment, backhoes, big trucks onto a site and do borings, that's disturbing open space, right, and damaging it. You talked about $11,000 premiums that are being paid to live adjacent to open space, similar to golf courses back in the 60s and 70s. If you destroy open space by putting commercial development on it, are those people going to be reimbursed $11,000 because you're taking that value away from them? My final question is, who in this room can help us in Upper Pottsgrove Township? I know Montgomery County Planning Commission can definitely do it because they were involved in the Smola Farm in 2008. This is the subdivision plan of the Smola Farm, processed and reviewed by Montgomery County Planning Commission. The note 8 says lot number 2, that was subdivided off a bigger property, which is a smaller farm, is to be used for public open space, subject to the requirements of Montgomery County Greenfield Green Towns Program, County Open Space Program. So when Dennis was asking for a resolution, we need your help. If they're allowed to do this to Upper Pottsgrove Township, and it was only 3 of the 5 commissioners, our 2 commissioners that wanted public comment are here. The other 3 don't show up. Now we have House Bill 1734. Is anybody familiar with this? It was just entered on October 2nd. This says that any development, any municipality can build a building under 3,000 square feet on open space without getting permission from anybody. Lee, you mentioned you have 23 acres in your township. How would you like to see a 3,000 square foot maintenance salt shed built right at the entrance to your park? Because if this bill goes through, that's what's gonna happen. It's Bill 1734. I have a couple copies if anybody wants to have it, but this cannot go through. It states that if they propose a building greater than 3,000 square feet, they have to put it out for a vote. You read it backwards, anything under 3,000 square feet, municipalities can do what they want. Swanksville's not a big borough. If they have a 5-acre site that's preserved, the government of Swanksville could say, we're gonna put a salt shed there. We have a lawsuit in Upper Pottsgrove Township, and the question is whether or not the land is open space. This proves it's open space because Montgomery County Planning Commission reviewed it and approved it. If the township loses that lawsuit and the court says you cannot build your municipal complex on there because it's open space, the township can say, okay, and then the next day they can refer to this bill and say, we're gonna put a salt shed on that property. We're gonna put a maintenance building on that property. And not only the buildings does it come with, it comes with the backhoes, the snow plows. We need your help. And while I'm asking, is anybody in this room willing to help us? Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm going to just stand up now because I actually have to go chair a meeting at 7, so don't make it look like I'm ducking out, but we'll stick as long as people want to. Anyway, we don't. There's no disagreement with what's been said, and obviously we're not the ones wanting to build anything on that particular property. This evening, this event is not necessarily the chance to make public policy or a decision on that basis, but I do appreciate hearing that, and we'll take that back. And we've been following this since it began. And as far as the county's involvement, that was the very first thing we dove into right away to make sure if we had a stake in this, in terms of a legal stake, because that would be very important to us. And we exhausted every opportunity to find out, and there was none. So we don't have a basis. Us showing up at the township is we have 62 municipalities, and if we were to go and any decision that we disagreed with show up, in that role, that would probably not be, we would probably not last long in that regard. But that doesn't mean we're not advocates. We do not support through different ways, and we follow the process as far as municipal land development, and we'll continue to do that with any property that comes soon. So thank you.
Pete Redslab and other members of this committee would come and make visits, because I go back 25, 27 years with this with this committee. If we can't vent here, the hell good are you?
Yeah, I appreciate it, but I also have to be responsible to everyone else and give everyone due time, so I thank you.
Yeah, that's here. Two quick things, and I would like a copy of that bill, because I do find that not necessarily productive, and would like to take a bigger look at that. Hopefully the panelists can stay for a few minutes. We do have to end because it's 6. I want to let sort of people go. But certainly please grab a drink, grab some more snacks. If you have a couple questions for the panelists, please feel free to stick around. We do have to be out by 6:45. That still leaves a half an hour. There is a fitness group in here at 7. Throw some cheese in a napkin. Take as much as you can. We don't want to have to take extras. We thank you for coming, and please, if you have questions, stick around and ask the panelists.